Hello and welcome to the Back to Space Newsflash. It is I, Danielle Dallas Russa. You might notice there's not a backdrop here and my hair looks terrible. Well, that is because I took a bus at 9:55 p.m. and rode for 9 hours until 8:30 a.m. and here I am in Tucson, Arizona. There were some extenuating circumstances that required me to get on a bus immediately. So anyways, I am here. I love you guys. So just know I'm going to be looking down a little bit because I don't have my teleprompter. Anyways, enough excuses. Let's get back to the Back to Space News Flash. Let's start out with one of my favorite pictures of the week. Have you guys seen this image of Christina Koch landing on Earth after her whole 328 days in space? Look at that face. That is the face of a woman who is a badass, which of course she is, because if you don't already know this, she was involved in the historical all-female spacewalk, and she broke the record for the longest single spaceflight for a woman in space. Her and her crew splashed down on Thursday, February 6th. Her crewmates were Commander Luca Parmitano of the ESA and cosmonaut Alexander, and I know I'm gonna say this wrong, Skvortsov. And they were all in great spirits, they were jovial, and Koch said the funniest thing ever. She said, and I quote, "Everyone says that getting back in gravity is such a surprise because you suddenly have to work to raise your own arms and, of course, your legs. I haven't even had to hold up my own body weight in a long time, so we will see how that goes." Oh, don't you just love Christina? You are a legend, woman. So we've mentioned SpaceX's Starlink satellites many a times, but guys, there is competition coming in hot. Greg Weiler, founder of OneWeb, has already had one launch back in February of 2019, but it only carried 6 satellites. Last week on February 6th, OneWeb lifted off on a Soyuz rocket operated by the French company Arianespace, carrying 34 new satellites. But they have no plans to slow down anytime soon. The Arianespace deal with OneWeb calls for 19 additional liftoffs through the end of 2021. These missions will flesh out OneWeb's initial constellation of 650 satellites, which will, and I quote, "will provide high-speed, low-latency services to a wide range of customers in sectors that include aeronautics, maritime, backhaul services, community Wi-Fi, emergency response services, and more." So, just to put this all into perspective, as we've been talking about Starlink a lot, SpaceX just got approval from the US Federal Communications Commission to loft 12,000 Starlink satellites into space, and they have already filed the paperwork to launch up to 30,000 more. And by the way, it doesn't stop there. What? Amazon is now developing its own network called Project Kuiper, which is envisioned to incorporate more than 3,000 satellites, but they haven't started yet. Guys, let's chat. I am nowhere close to having children anytime soon, but at one point I want to have my little awkward redhead child and look up at the sky and say, look at these stars. I don't want to have all this space satellites everywhere. What do you guys think? Do you want a great night sky or great Wi-Fi? Someone make a rap about that. Leave it in the comments. Let's move on. Okay, guys, so this is kind of a long story, but here we go. Do you remember on December 20th when an uncrewed Starliner spacecraft launched on top of an Atlas V rocket on a trip to the International Space Station? It was kind of embarrassing because the Boeing CST-100 Starliner was supposed to demonstrate its ability to safely transport astronauts to and from the International Space Station, and this was known as the OFT, Orbital Flight Test Mission. But then it didn't reach the correct orbit and instead spent the next 2 days circling around Earth alone before landing in New Mexico, and I've been told that this landing was superb. Okay, well, we're talking about this again because this past week, the NASA administrator, Jim Bridenstine, had a teleconference with reporters discussing the findings of an independent review about the whole thing. So, apparently, there were several issues, and a lot of them had to do with the spacecraft's software. So let's go back to the first issue, which was identified pretty soon after it launched. Basically, they didn't execute an orbit insertion burn. Boeing then was like, oh my God, because the mission elapsed timer had been pulled in incorrect time from the Atlas V rocket nearly 11 hours before liftoff. The Starliner was supposed to retrieve that information from the rocket during the final countdown period. Because this happened prematurely, the Starliner's internal clock had the wrong time, so it kind of makes sense. The second issue was also a software problem that was discovered before the spacecraft's return to Earth. And guys, let's heighten this a little bit more. This glitch, if you can call it that, could have potentially led to the collision between the Starliner's crew module and the service module, which are designed to separate in orbit before the new module lands. Oh my God. This problem Boeing officials are calling a valve mapping error. Okay, it had to do with the software that tells Starliner's modules to separate before landings. If Boeing hadn't caught this glitch before Starliner came back to Earth, the modules would have bumped into each other, which would have destabilized the crew module during its critical point in its descent. While the independent review of the Starliner's OFT issues is still underway, NASA expects to have a final report by the end of February. Bridenstine also added that NASA has not yet decided whether to conduct a second orbital flight test using Starliners to fly astronauts to the International Space Station. Let me just jump in here and say, hey Jim, my friend, maybe we should do just like one more test. Am I right? Just maybe one, like half of one. This past weekend was dubbed by NASA the Big Weekend. This is because of the Cygnus cargo ship launch and the Solar Orbiter launch. So this is being filmed ahead of time on Sunday afternoon. So I'm gonna break down what is supposed to happen and we can discuss everything next week. Let's start with Cygnus's resupply ship. The ship is named Robert H. Lawrence Jr., who was the first African-American selected as an astronaut. The uncrewed supply carrier is going to lift off on Sunday evening to begin a 35-hour trip to the International Space Station. And just as a little background on the Cygnus supply ship by Northrop Grumman, I can never say Northrop, is under contract to NASA. This mission is the 13th operational resupply launch to the space station. It will be carrying more than 7,500 pounds of supplies. That's a little much. The Cygnus NG-12 departed the space station on January 31st and it currently remains in orbit. As we discussed in the past episode, it will re-enter atmosphere for a destructive re-entry with several tons of space trash, and it will lead to a fiery death of doom. The second launch is going to happen 6 hours later and is the Solar Orbiter. This is a joint mission between NASA and the European Space Agency. It was originally supposed to launch on February 5th, but there was an issue with the Atlas V rocket, so they pushed it to Sunday. The Solar Orbiter will study the surface of the sun up close and personal. To do so, the craft is outfitted with 10 different types of instruments. These will make detailed observation, providing a more comprehensive view of our sun, including, guys, the first image of the sun's polar regions. Because I know that keeps you up at night wondering, what does the sun's polar regions look like? Well, you're gonna find out. And for the Space Dog segment, although I am not in Los Angeles, I have scheduled a once-in-a-lifetime interview with Maya the Space Dog. Maya, yes, hello. Talk to me about the fact that NASA authorization bill has advanced in the House that will potentially limit the commercial partners. Truer words have never been more spoken. Have never been spoken? I don't know. You're brilliant. The past. On February 9th, 1971, Apollo 14 splashed down after a great trip to the moon. Here's a cute little photo of my grandfather. So, on this day in space, on February 9th, 1913, there was the one and only great meteor procession of 1913. So on February 9th, 1913, hundreds of fireball meteors rained down on North America for no apparent reason. This strange event is known as the Great Meteor Procession. Meteors appear to originate from the same point in the sky called the radiant, but these meteors weren't shooting out from any kind of radiant. Instead, they seem to be flying in formation and moving horizontally through the sky parallel to Earth's surface. The meteors were also moving unusually slow, and the procession lasted for several minutes. To this day, astronomers aren't really sure what was up with this bizarre meteor shower. What do you guys think? Let me know. I would have loved to see that. The winner for last week's, by the way, I don't know what this is. I'm in a hospital right now, so it's a bowl. So this is for the t-shirt, the long sleeve t-shirt from last week. And the winner is Autumn Runs. Autumn Runs, you won the shirt. So go ahead and send an email to info@backtospace.com and we will get you all figured out. Let's see if I make this. It's all the way across the conference room. Yeah. This week's giveaway is a book by a great friend of mine and a mentor to me when I was working at NASA. And his name is Alan Ladwig. Alan has been recognized for his leadership and contributions in the field of policy, communications, and STEM education in the aerospace sector. He is especially known for playing a leading role in developing and managing programs to directly engage the general public in space research and space-related outreach opportunities. That's actually what he did at NASA. Oh, that's an explain. During his career, he received NASA's Distinguished Service Medal, the Exceptional Achievement Medal, 2 Exceptional Service Medals, the Outstanding Leadership Medal, and was a member of 6 Group Achievement Awards. Dang, now that is a resume. He is a fellow of the American Astronomical Society. So what are we giving away, you might ask? His book, See You in Orbit, Our Dream of Spaceflight. This book is the first non-fiction book to take a historical, personal, and often humorous look at the promises, expectations, principles, personalities, and milestones regarding the goal and dream individuals have to fly in space. The tale begins with a version of theoretical and practicing aerospace engineers in the 1920s and 30s, reviews space achievements and predictions for public space travel throughout the space race beginning in the 1950s and through the 60s. It also features public expectations in response to the advertised capabilities of the space shuttle throughout the 1970s and 80s, recounts the creations of the spaceflight participant program and the tragic Challenger accident. So I am very much looking forward to you getting your hands on one of those super special copies. So what you're gonna do to get this prize, you're gonna 1, leave a comment. You're gonna 2, like this video, because look at this amazing backdrop. You like it, don't you? And 3, subscribe to our channel. Guys, last week, lots of comments, loved it. Let's keep it up, all right? And that's it for this week's Back to Space News Flash. Thanks everyone so much for watching this week's episode of Back to Space News Flash. I know you guys want that book, because I want one too, and I'm getting one. I already have one in the mail. You don't even need to buy it. You can just leave a comment and you'll get it. Guys, leave a comment about all the stuff that you love, like my dog.